When you begin to focus on yourself, something powerful starts to shift inside you. The world around you may stay the same for a while, people still doubt you, circumstances still test you, and life may not get easier overnight. But your perspective begins to evolve. You stop looking outward for answers and start turning inward for strength. Instead of chasing approval, you begin to find peace in your own reflection. That's the first real transformation. Not in your success, not in your appearance, but in the silence you make peace with. You begin to realize that your worth is not dependent on who claps for you or who walks away. It's rooted in your ability to keep going even when no one is watching. This shift doesn't come from ego, it comes from clarity. You stop asking why they don't support you, why they left, or why they doubted you. Instead, you ask yourself, why did I wait so long to believe in myself? And in that moment of self-questioning, you begin to reclaim your power. The moment you stop trying to impress and start trying to improve, the real growth begins. That's when discipline replaces distraction. That's when solitude becomes sacred, not scary. That's when people's opinions lose their control over your choices. The truth is, most people are more afraid of your potential than your failure. They're comfortable with your silence, not your success. So when you start focusing on yourself, you inevitably make people uncomfortable because you're no longer who they can control, belittle, or define. You're no longer the version of yourself who needs permission to be powerful, and that's what shocks them. Not the fame, not the money, but your quiet commitment to self-evolution, your refusal to quit, your decision to stop shrinking. It's not about proving them wrong. It's about proving to yourself that you were never broken, just buried. Buried under expectations, past wounds, and the noise of a world that never really tried to understand you. When you focus on yourself, you dig deep and start pulling yourself out of that place. Layer by layer, you rise. And in that rising, something magical happens. You stop reacting and start responding. You stop rushing and start reflecting. You stop fearing loneliness and begin to cherish your own company. The glow-up isn't external. It's not the car, the body, the clothes, or the applause. It's internal. It's how you walk into a room not needing to be liked. It's how you face rejection and still keep your head high. It's how you love yourself on the days when nothing feels lovable, and people notice that. They notice your shift, your energy, your focus, and it shocks them. Because you didn't scream for attention, you didn't beg to be seen, you simply became undeniable by becoming whole. Every minute you invest in yourself, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, pays off in a currency this world can't take from you, self-respect. You start to see that the journey isn't about changing who you are. It's about remembering who you are beneath all the pain, pressure, and expectations. And when you do, you unlock something that can't be taught, bought, or borrowed: personal power, the kind that walks away from what no longer serves you. The kind that doesn't need validation to feel valuable, the kind that silently shocks the world just by choosing to rise anyway. So focus on yourself, not out of revenge but out of reverence, not to prove anything to others, but to honor everything within you that was waiting to be seen. Because when you do that, you don't just change your life, you inspire others to change theirs. When you stop chasing validation from others and begin validating yourself, a new chapter unfolds, one where you're no longer held hostage by opinions, rejections, or silence. You start to realize how often you've allowed other people to define your worth, your dreams, your direction. The constant need to be liked, to be accepted, to be told you're enough, fades into the background as you begin to build a foundation rooted in your own truth. And that's not easy. It's uncomfortable because validation feels good, it's addictive. But the moment you let go of it, you begin to see just how much of your life has been shaped by people who were never meant to guide you. Focusing on yourself doesn't mean becoming selfish. It means becoming aware. Aware of your needs, your wounds, your purpose. You stop performing and start living. You start showing up as you, unapologetically and imperfectly. And that alone is rare in a world full of masks. The more you focus inward, the more you see how your energy shifts. You don't react to every little comment. You don't explain yourself to people who never cared to understand. You simply exist in your lane, doing the inner work, healing what needs to be healed, and growing in silence. And silence becomes your strength. The second you stop waiting for others to recognize your value, you reclaim your voice. You take ownership of your journey. You stop looking for external praise and start giving yourself internal permission to rest, to dream, to try again. And people won't understand it. Some will mock you, distance themselves, or act cold. Not because you've changed into someone worse, but because you've evolved into someone they can't manipulate. You're no longer begging for a seat at their table. You're building your own. That confidence, that self-built resilience, is what truly shocks them. They expected you to collapse. They were sure you'd stay broken, but instead you chose to rise, not with noise, but with grace. You started moving differently. You stopped oversharing with people who only listened to judge. You stopped explaining your worth to those committed to misunderstanding you. And in that stillness your power returned, quietly, firmly, without drama. That's what makes the difference. When you stop looking outward and start looking inward, your entire life takes a new direction. You recognize that not everyone is meant to come along. You realize some connections were distractions in disguise. You stop chasing people who never stopped running, and you start attracting people who see your growth, not your gaps. You no longer live for likes or approval. You live for peace, for purpose, for progress. And that creates a life where even if no one claps for you, you still clap for yourself. Because you know what it took. You know how many nights you wanted to quit. You know how many times you had to choose healing over hurt. True power isn't loud. It's silent, rooted, unshakable. And when you finally operate from a place of self-assurance, people will be shocked. Not by what you've achieved, but by who you've become. Not because you've won in front of them, but because you've healed in silence. You didn't force them to notice you. You simply outgrew the need to be noticed. And in doing so, you became the version of yourself that doesn't just survive, but thrives. Because in the end, focusing on yourself is not just a decision, it's a declaration that your worth is no longer negotiable. And once you reach that point, no one can take it from you. Success doesn't always come with applause. In fact, most of the time, the journey toward your goals is silent, lonely, and filled with moments when giving up feels easier than going on. But when you truly begin to focus on yourself and build something meaningful, you understand that real growth happens in the dark. It's in the days when no one is watching, when no one is cheering, that you find out who you are. Discipline becomes your companion, not motivation. Consistency becomes your language, not performance. You stop waiting for the perfect time, the perfect mood, or the perfect support. You just start. You show up for yourself every single day, even when it's hard, even when it's boring, even when no one notices. And that's what people don't understand. They only see the results. They see the glow, the success, the transformation, but they don't see the nights of doubt, the mornings you pushed through tears, the silent battles you fought inside your mind. They don't see the version of you that had every reason to quit but chose to continue, and that decision, to keep going, is what separates those who only wish from those who do. You stopped waiting for someone to fix it, to notice you, to save you. You decided to take control. And that internal shift is what creates external impact, you start embracing the grind. You realize that success isn't a one-time event. It's built through thousands of small decisions that no one sees. The decision to say no to distractions. The decision to stay focused when everyone else is relaxing. The decision to believe in a vision that exists only in your heart. These aren't glamorous choices. They don't come with praise, but over time they build something powerful. You stop trying to impress others and start aiming to improve yourself. And that's when the real progress begins. There are days you'll feel like it's not working. You'll feel stuck, unseen, and maybe even foolish for trying so hard. But don't let that stop you, because growth isn't always visible. Just like a seed pushing through the soil, you may not see the progress from the outside, but something is happening underneath. You're becoming stronger, more focused, more aligned. And one day, the results will speak so loudly that you won't have to say a word. The same people who overlooked you will be shocked by your growth, but by then their approval won't matter. Because you didn't do it for them, you did it for you. And as your consistency pays off, you begin to feel a different kind of confidence. It's not the loud, boastful kind. It's quiet, calm, rooted. It's the confidence that comes from knowing what you went through, from remembering the battles no one saw. It's the confidence that can't be shaken by opinions, because it was built in solitude. You stop fearing failure because you know how to rise. You stop craving validation because you validate yourself every time you follow through. That's the power of staying consistent when no one is clapping. That's the magic of focusing on yourself, not just when it's convenient, but especially when it's hard. You learn to honor the process, you learn to love the climb more than the destination, and somewhere along the way, you become the kind of person who doesn't just dream, but delivers. The kind of person who keeps showing up even when it's tough. The kind of person who shocks everyone, not with noise, but with results. And that is more powerful than any applause ever could be. There's something deeply powerful about learning to be at peace with solitude. Not the kind of loneliness that makes you feel empty, but the kind of solitude that helps you discover yourself. When you truly begin to focus on yourself, you no longer need the constant buzz of people, opinions, or noise to feel alive. You start to realize that your own presence is enough. You learn to sit with your thoughts, confront your fears, and listen to the parts of yourself that you used to ignore. That's when you start becoming whole, not because someone completed you, but because you finally remembered who you were before the world tried to define you. Most people run from silence because in silence the truth gets louder. The insecurities, the regrets, the dreams you buried, they all start to rise. And that's exactly why this kind of solitude is so essential. You can't heal in chaos. You can't grow while being distracted by everyone else's opinions. You need the stillness, that space where the only voice you hear is your own, because that's where real clarity begins. That's where the healing starts, not on social media, not in someone else's arms, but in the quiet corners of your own soul. And it's not easy. At first, the silence can feel unbearable. The nights get heavy. You question everything. Your worth, your decisions, your direction. But as you push through that discomfort, something inside begins to shift. You begin to trust yourself again. You begin to see that being alone doesn't mean being broken. It means being brave enough to stand on your own. You stop chasing temporary comfort and start building lasting strength. You no longer rely on someone else to tell you who you are. You create that identity yourself, brick by brick. The people around you might not understand it. They might think you've changed. They'll wonder why you're not as available, why you're not seeking their approval like you used to. And they'll be shocked. Not because you became someone new, but because you finally became someone true. You started protecting your peace. You stopped answering every call, stopped attending every argument, stopped explaining your silence. Because your silence isn't empty, it's sacred. It's where your energy is being protected, your dreams are being nurtured, your healing is taking root. You begin to realize that peace is the new success, that a quiet mind, a calm heart, and a clear vision are more valuable than attention, drama, or fake relationships. You don't need to be seen every day to feel valid. You don't need to post your growth for it to be real. The most powerful things in life often happen in the background, and when you emerge stronger, wiser, more grounded, people will ask where you've been. But you won't need to explain, because your energy, your presence, your calm, they'll say it all. And it's not that you've shut the world out. It's that you've tuned into yourself so clearly that not everyone fits into your frequency anymore. You start attracting better people, better habits, better thoughts, not because you demanded it, but because you became it. You aligned yourself with the life you want by detaching from the noise that held you back. So when you choose solitude, you're not choosing isolation. You're choosing self-respect. You're choosing clarity. You're choosing to build a version of yourself so complete that the world no longer defines your worth. And that's how you shock everyone, not by speaking louder, but by glowing quieter. When you start showing up as your authentic self, without apology, without shrinking, and without seeking permission, everything changes. You no longer walk into rooms trying to fit in. You walk in knowing you belong, whether they accept you or not. That kind of confidence doesn't come from ego. It comes from alignment. You've spent enough time pretending, enough time molding yourself to meet other people's expectations, enough time being less, just to make others comfortable, but now your focus has shifted inward. You've realized that real power isn't about performance, it's about presence. Just being who you truly are is more than enough. The moment you step into your authenticity, you stop needing to be chosen. You stop auditioning for roles in other people's lives. You become the kind of person who isn't afraid to take up space, who doesn't apologize for their light, who doesn't second-guess every word they speak, because you've learned the hard way that dimming your truth doesn't protect you. It only delays your becoming, and that delay is too costly. So now you choose truth, you choose real, you choose fully, loudly, even if it makes some people uncomfortable. And yes, it will make some people uncomfortable, because when you stop pretending, you stop being predictable. You're no longer the version of yourself they could control, manipulate, or mold. You've outgrown the need to explain your growth. You simply live it. Your life becomes a mirror, and not everyone is ready to face what it reflects. They might call you arrogant, they might say you've changed, and they're right, you have. You've evolved from needing them to accepting yourself. And that evolution is what shocks them the most. You also start recognizing that not every space deserves your energy. You no longer chase rooms where your voice is silenced or your presence is tolerated. Instead, you create your own table where you don't have to shrink, prove, or beg to be seen. You speak your truth, not to be loud, but to be free. You realize that freedom doesn't come from external approval, it comes from internal alignment. You're not here to be liked, you're here to be real, and that decision liberates you from the trap of constantly seeking permission to exist as you are. What's even more powerful is how peace begins to replace anxiety. You're no longer performing for acceptance. You're no longer anxious about being misunderstood. You know that the right people will see you, and the wrong ones never mattered. That kind of peace can't be bought, only earned through self-awareness, self-respect, and brutal honesty with yourself. And it's in that honesty that you reclaim every piece of yourself you once gave away just to feel wanted. Suddenly, the noise doesn't matter. The gossip, the opinions, the backhanded compliments, they bounce off. Because you're no longer living for the world. You're living in alignment with your purpose, your calling, your truth. You wake up every day not trying to impress, but trying to improve. And that shift makes all the difference. You're not chasing the spotlight anymore. You asterisk the light, and light doesn't need to compete. It simply shines. So yes, people will be shocked. Not because you got louder, but because you got real. Not because you started fighting, but because you stopped explaining. You stopped settling. You stopped waiting for someone to validate what you already knew deep down, that you were always enough. You just had to believe it, and now you do, quietly, confidently, completely. There comes a moment in life when you realize that not everyone who walks with you is walking asterisk for asterisk you. The people you thought would cheer the loudest in your success often grow silent. Those who clapped when you struggled might quietly disappear when you rise. And it hurts, it really does. But this pain, this truth, becomes one of your greatest teachers. You start to see that the journey of self-discovery is not about surrounding yourself with more people. It's about understanding who truly deserves access to you. When you focus on yourself, you become more selective, not out of arrogance, but out of awareness. You no longer chase connections. You observe them. You listen more closely, not to what people say, but to how they make you feel. Do they lift you or drain you? Do they support you when no one is watching or only when it benefits them? These answers reveal more than years of friendship ever could. Because the more you grow, the more obvious it becomes. Energy doesn't lie. Some people are only around for the version of you that stayed small. The moment you dream bigger, speak louder, heal deeper, they get uncomfortable. And not because you're doing something wrong, but because you're doing something different. This is when your focus becomes your shield. You stop wasting time convincing people of your worth. You stop giving chances to those who repeatedly showed you who they are. You no longer beg for loyalty, you require it, and that's how you begin to shock people. Not by seeking revenge, not by lowering yourself to their level, but by removing yourself entirely and choosing peace over presence. Your silence begins to speak louder than your arguments ever could. Your absence starts to echo louder than your presence used to. You also begin to understand that not all distance is bad. Sometimes the space you create from others gives you the clarity to hear yourself again. It helps you remember who you were before the world tried to shape you. You go back to the parts of you that were buried under people, pleasing and fear. You begin to rebuild, not out of bitterness, but out of necessity, and what you build in solitude cannot be shaken by the noise of others. That unshakable foundation becomes your superpower. When you stop depending on others for your direction, you finally take control of the wheel. You chart your own course. You realize that not every exit is a loss. Some exits are redirections. Some endings are the beginning of peace. And peace becomes your priority, not attention, not approval, not validation, just peace. You'd rather have 2 real people in your corner than a room full of masks pretending to clap. You'd rather walk alone in truth than be surrounded in pretense. That's the maturity focus brings. And when people start to notice your glow, your confidence, your calm, they're shocked. Because they remember the version of you that doubted everything. They remember the one who always gave too many chances, who tolerated too much, who shrunk themselves for others. But now you've evolved quietly, strategically. You didn't announce your transformation, you became it. And that's what they didn't see coming. Not the new job, not the new circle, not even the new version of you, but your decision to no longer tolerate what once drained you. This shift is never easy. You'll miss people, you'll question yourself, but stay rooted in your why. Remember, choosing yourself isn't betrayal, it's survival, it's strength, it's growth. And one day, you'll look back and thank yourself for making the hard decisions, for walking away from the noise, and for trusting that focusing on you was the beginning of everything real.